Nalifurahia waliponiambia twende.
You are listening to some of Salem's newest neighbors, all refugees resettled here by Doug and Anya Holcomb, founders of Salem for Refugees. You can see this Fall Thrive event video on their website, salemforrefugees.org. I asked Anya to tell us the story behind the nonprofit she and Doug founded to help these refugees survive and thrive. 350 refugees call Salem their home. And that's really extraordinary, and it's a welcoming place. And I know that Salem for Refugees was started to help people just like those who have made Salem their home. And there's a story there. How did you and your husband, Doug, become so impassioned to assist refugees, wherever they are, so that they can make a new home and thrive there? Tell me the story of Salem for Refugees.
Yeah, so back in 2015, my husband Doug and I and our kids spent a year living in Eastern Europe. We were working for a relief and development organization there. And it was during that time, some of you might remember seeing on the news when there was a mass migration of people coming out of Africa and the Middle East, making their way through Eastern Europe on their way into Western Europe. And the organization that we were working for was helping to run a refugee camp in Macedonia. And at one point, there were literally thousands of people passing through that refugee camp every day. And so it was during that time that we were exposed to the refugee crisis that's happening in the world. And I met other families that really looked just like our family, parents with young children, and their grandparents that had been traveling outside for days or even weeks on foot, sleeping on the ground in forests, traveling over large bodies of water in very small boats with others who didn't survive the journey. And as I met them and heard their stories of why they had to flee their homes, literally fleeing places they had spent their entire lives. It had been their family's home for generations. They had jobs, friends, family, people they loved, and they fled because of war and violence.
How many of those refugees get to come to a third country and resettle?
Right now in the world, there are 79.5 million displaced people in the world. So those are people who have been forced from their home because of war, persecution, and violence. And of those, there are 26 million who are officially categorized as refugees by the United Nations. And those are people who have physically crossed a border into another country to seek safety. And of those, less than 1% ever get a chance to be resettled in any third country. So not just the United States, but any third country. So it's a very small fraction.
What happens to those people? I mean, where do they stay during that time? We hear about refugee camps and long stays there, but just how long? How long do these people end up staying in a refugee camp?
It's a great question. The majority of families that we've gotten to know who've come here to Salem have been in refugee camps for an average of about 15 to 20 years. And so most of their children were actually born and raised in those refugee camps. So their whole life, that's the only thing that they have known. And what's been incredible is seeing some of these kids over the last couple of years. For example, just this June, we had 12 new neighbors, 12 of these refugee students who graduated from high school. And most of them were students who had lived their whole lives in refugee camps and got here a few years ago. Most didn't know any English when they first got here, learned it. The kids learned so quickly within probably about 6 months, graduated from high school. Now a lot of them attending Shemeketa and have hopes and dreams of becoming nurses and teachers and airline pilots. So it's just incredible to watch their stories and their resilience.
That's what I am getting from you, that they are getting feet on the ground here. Are they not just surviving here, but thriving?
But these are some of the most resilient people I have ever met. What they have had to do simply to survive and be so innovative and creative and hardworking, they bring those same skills here as they resettle in the community. And so seeing people after only being here 2 or 3 years, having children graduating from high school and beginning to go to college, working full-time jobs in the community and providing for their families, being active in their faith communities and contributing to helping other refugees resettle. We have refugees who've been here that are now helping others. Driving cars, owning their own vehicles, so just seeing that progression of coming to a new place and really beginning to thrive. And it's just a privilege to be able to walk alongside folks and really to get to learn from them of how they navigate such hardship and yet are such incredible people and contributing so much wherever they go.
You have some exciting news that you have in the works, and it is an expansion of your services, rather welcoming expansion.
Yes, one thing we're really excited about from this past year during the very difficult season of this pandemic that we're in, we received a grant from the Oregon Health Authority to do some COVID prevention work, and through that have been able to hire 3 of our new neighbors, which is the term we like to use to talk about refugees, who are now part of our staff at Salem for Refugees as community educators. And so they're the ones taking the lead in communicating health and safety information and providing resources to their language communities. Another thing we're really excited about is that we are just now moving into our own office space. It's a house located centrally in Salem. And in addition to offices, a big portion of that space is going to be set up as a welcome center for our new neighbors to be able to come and access services and support and resources in a very home-like environment.
What's needed and how can people help?
We always have volunteer needs. When new families come, we have volunteers who are a part of resource teams. We have 10 different teams that are supporting refugees in key areas of resettlement. So things like housing, healthcare, transportation, employment, English, legal support. So all these key areas to get to come alongside and provide the necessary resources, especially during the first year or two of resettlement. So if you're interested in getting involved as a volunteer, we would love to talk with you.
Everything that you've told me tells me that the people who are coming here are settling in a lot more easily if it, with your help, Salem for Refugees is doing its part with other partners. I can't imagine what it would be like to try to do that unsupported. You just can't. It would be really hard if they didn't have you there to help.
Well, we really believe it's a whole community effort, and we're neighbors. They're our new neighbors. We're neighbors with one another. We have so much to learn from them, and there's key ways that we can support them as they are brand new in our community. So I think we all need help and support, and I think it's just so important thinking of it could just as easily be any one of us that we're having to restart our lives. And so how can we welcome these folks the way that we would want to be welcomed?
Thank you so much for joining us today on InSight. This is Anya Holcomb. She is co-founder of Salem for Refugees right here in Salem. And thank you for telling us this beautiful story. And in the middle of a pandemic, we need beautiful stories.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Learn more about Salem for Refugees, become involved, or donate by going to their website, www.salemforrefugees.org.